Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 92nd audio chat on the Q News Patriot Rumble Channel series. I am the Q News Patriot, joined today by Maricopa County whistleblower Michele Swinick. My name is SG Anon. The audience out there is going to be very familiar with Miss Swinick, as she has been actively blowing the whistle, tracking and exposing significant amounts of corruption. I would even go so far as to say, pseudo-nepotistic style corruption there in Maricopa County. And the model that she's unearthed for patriots that have followed our program over the last few months is sort of an exportable template, which is likely being utilized across the entirety of the nation at the county level. Ms. Swinick joins me today to give me updates and additional information in a two-part conversation. We just simply do not have time today to cover every single bit. We'll be back on air for the second part soon. But I think the first part of our conversation is really going to catch patriots up on how this system and how this overarching operational template actually works and what is viable and feasible as we move forward. Ms. Swinick, thank you again for coming on. It's always a pleasure.
SG, I love coming on the show because you get it, my friend. You get it. And thank you for having me on. Now, the last time I was here was a while ago, so I looked it up and it was May 9th. So a lot has been exposed since then, but instead of just filling in the blanks in between, we're going to go to the most recent. I was going to originally start off with showing you the illegal recount, the erasing of the ballots, and the primary election here in 2024 that just happened. Our election was on the 30th of July, but this particular events where they did an illegal recount in Maricopa County, which is against the law, was on the 3rd of August. But because last week I received finally public records requests. Remember those guys? We talked about how important the public records requests are, and they are very revealing. They're admissions of the county when there's crimes, if the actual documents show crimes or violations or maladministration or election fraud, malfeasance, pick an adjective. So last week, I put some pressure on them and said, I'm going to file a lawsuit if you do not get these to me immediately. And there was 13 outstanding public records requests. Now we're going to focus on the 2022 election, then we're going to jump to what just happened in 2024. But what I'm going to show you today, I'm going to give you a little teaser. There is no chain of custody records for pretty much the entire election of 2022 in Maricopa County on November 8th. No chain of custody records. Some of it we've shown you already in the show, but I'm going to do a recap. I'm going to show you the new stuff. That what numbers, voters, number of ballots, actual votes cast that were happening at the election centers. There is no paper trail to document that, or the actual transportation of the ballots to the election center so that the number matches when they actually get it there, okay? There's no chain of custody records. So whatever numbers they tell you for every single category, when it comes to people, ballots, paper, the actual ballot paper, you're gonna see that here in a second, there's no documentation. So whatever number they told you, therefore it shall be, and that's your election. That's not an election, okay? So did you have a question before we show some of the graphics, SG? I want that to sink in. There's no verification to anything. And we also know, which is shown on this show before, that the election records and returns and documents do not match in a lot of situations the county's reporting of what the numbers were. So their own documents don't match what they told you. And there's no record, no paper trail to bridge together the two. That's the chain of custody. So it's made up, okay? Made up. You're going to see that in admission from their own public records requests here in a second.
You know, here in the United States of America, you cannot apply for a transport driver job in any capacity without passing something called a drug test or a drug examination. A very simple chain of custody operation ensures that that test remains unaltered and unadulterated from start to finish. And the individuals, and I've seen many of them personally in my life experience, that handle these types of chains of custody oftentimes have no more than a 10th or 11th grade education. In other words, this is not a complex issue. That's the only comment I have as we start our discussion today. I'm very interested to see the events that have been occurring right before our very eyes there in Maricopa County. And with that, Ms. Swinick, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you.
Okay, so let's look at the public records request. Now bear with me. I gotta share the screens. But share screen, hang on. You guys know that you gotta help me. I gotta disable me. SG, sorry. For the share screen.
Multiple shares.
Here we go. Share sound just in case. So we're gonna look at the public records request that just came in first. Okay. All right, we got full screen. You can see this. Yeah.
Indeed.
All right. Okay, perfect. So there was 13 public records requests outstanding that I had, and I put this out there for everybody to go ahead and request the same document so you guys can see this. Again, since we started exposing all of this, which was 256 days ago, I've highly encouraged everyone to put in the public records request for yourself so you can also get the documents. Anybody in the country can, so you can see it, because you know this is happening in your county. No one's just looked before. All right, so here we go. As you can see on the left is their response to me, and you'll see my response, my initial email to them, but this is what I want you to concentrate on first. So this is on the 4th. It happened last week because the 22-month mark was coming up, which is the federal code, federal law, when they destroy documents conveniently after 22 months after an election. So I blew the whistle and was telling everybody, hello, make sure you get these in because you have 3 days, 2 days, 1 day before, poof, they're gone. So they got me my 13 public records requests, or what they thought was the response, in 3 hours and 20 minutes after I sent the email telling them if they don't get it, then I'm going to file a lawsuit. So now if you can see on here, I did my typical highlighting and underlining. Now I want you to see where they say there are no responsive records for number 2378, number 2318, okay? No responsive records means they don't have any documents. They have nothing to match up for what I was requesting. Now let's look at 2378. And this will be really fun for everyone who has followed and watched these shows with me before. So look on the right-hand side. The right-hand side is the 2 original public records requests, because I want you to see that this is the response from the county, right? So I want you to see that this is their response. Now, look, I put it in on March 20th for 2378. Now, 2378, now this goes along with when I originally asked for those check-in reports that I, as a judge, was supposed to, which is according to statute, ARS 16602, required the judge, which was me, to create a report to compare the number of people that checked in versus the number of votes cast. Again, 2 most important things that you need to know in an election. If you don't have those, or chain of custody for those who don't have an election, and they didn't have either one. So they said that they don't have reports for all the voting centers to show how many people checked in to vote. We knew that because I didn't fill it out, and it's not on the precinct ballot report, which is the audit form that we do at night. So I went further, okay? I said, I am requesting all records documenting the number of voter check-ins on November 8th, 2022 for the election, and all site book records, which is where you go check in. It's the tablet where you check in to vote. You sign your name with your finger. Site book records, logs, and information of any kind related thereto. So I want to know where this magical number came from, because we know it didn't come from the vote centers, from the site books, because nobody completed that, right? And it was required by law. It was required by the Elections Procedures Manual. And all of the Republicans, remember that was the testimonials where that shows that they knew. Gina Swoboda, who was the 3rd vice chair of the AZ GOP, knew about this information not being gathered by the poll workers or the poll observers. The RNC knew, the county knew, the hotline knew, the MCRC knew. It's all in those sworn affidavits, okay? So they all knew. Everybody knew. That means Kari Lake's attorneys knew because it was in their lawsuit, okay? But it was in the back. It was in those exhibits, all those sworn affidavits. So everybody knew. Nobody did anything about it. So I want to know where that number came in, because that's really important. The check-ins, how many people actually showed up? Now it's on their reports. Remember that exhibit 11 where they showed how many people, how many votes there were, how many votes reported, and how many people were checked in. And we know, because we've shown on my show, and I think some of this, again, there's a gap between when I was last here and all of the rest of the information I exposed, but the numbers don't match up. The county's own documents, official election records, returns, and documents do not match the numbers that the county has reported, okay? So they're not even agreeing with their or using their own numbers according to the documents, because it's not what they wanted, right? Again, it's what the county says, therefore it shall be. So I want to know where's this information? I want the records from the site book. Okay, I want the records from the site book. No, I'm going to jump ahead for a second because I want you to see what their response is, and then I'm going to go back to the second one because it's that important. All right, so we're just talking right now about the magical number of people that checked in, because we know that there's no records from the voting centers, and I am now requesting it from their records, their site book records, those machines. They obviously they have data, they're a computer. I want to know, and I want all the logs, I want the records, I want that. Here's their response to me. All right, hold on, because there's an order here. I'm just skipping ahead. Because I asked them, I said, and this is important, okay? I want you to see this. I said that public records is my response on the following day. I said, public records request, it is incomplete and missing information. Please provide the information. There were 7 record requests that were listed that were incomplete, where they were missing of the 13. And look at the arrows. I made nice arrows for everybody. PRR 2378. This is the site books. This is why I put the nail in the coffin right here. They did it to themselves. All records documenting the number of check-ins on November 8, 2022 for the election, and all site book records, logs, and information any kind related thereto. So my response to them was, how are there no responsive records for PRR 2378 when Maricopa County, okay, this is important, provided the number of check-ins on Exhibit 11 reconciliation report that was sent to the Assistant Attorney General along with the county's letter dated November 27th, 2022. Where did Maricopa County generate the number of check-ins from for the information on that spreadsheet and the audit reconciliation spreadsheet? Because they have an audit reconciliation spreadsheet that they sent me also. Where did that number come from? Because if they can't prove where that number came from, the number that they are reporting is potentially fraudulent because there's nothing to back it up. And this is what they provided to the Attorney General in their response and to the whole, in all of that 9-page report, and including all the exhibits. So that's a fraud, that could potentially be now a fraudulent number, okay? Because there's nothing to back it up. Now here's their response to me. Okay, here's their response. You have received all the responsive documents for your request. They don't have it. They don't have it. And if they do have it, they're not providing it. So not only they're saying that they're lying, but they're not going to give it because it obviously is not going to, it's not going to match. But as far as we're concerned, you have received all the responsive documents for your request. So when you're going to see, I'm going to go through the 13. So you're going to see that here in a second. You're going to see the 13. Of those 7, they don't have any of them. Okay, a lot of these have to do with chain of custody. They don't have nothing. They have absolutely nothing to prove these numbers. Okay, you are talking about a whole new level of crime that they are admitting. Now let's go back. Let's go back to the other one I pointed out first. I pointed this out because this is really important. Okay, so that was just a check-in.
I'd like to take a moment, Ms. Swinick, if I could, right here at this moment. I want to highlight for the audience out there that we now have some sort of admission from Maricopa County that they have participated in fraud against critical national infrastructure. That's what our election system is. This is Gotham level admission happening right here before our very eyes from their own mouths. Please continue.
Mm-hmm. So it's actually the second admission, but it's worse. So the first time they said, we don't have any of those reports that you asked for, Michelle, that you were supposed to fill out. This is now even going further to saying, okay, reports, fine, whatever. I want the source of where this came from. And as SG is trying to get you guys to get your arms around, they don't have it. Okay, this is now major. Now, look at this. You're going to love this, right? So the second one was 2318. And 2318, look at that date. the 28th. I'm going to blow that up. 28th of February. That's how long this has been going on. I've been dancing with these guys for a long time. It's a very bad tango. So this one, I'm requesting all ballot stock logs from all 223 vote centers for the November 8th, 2022 election. Okay. Now, ballot stock is your paper. It is your piece of paper. It is your piece of paper that ballot stock log sample. This is it. This is your paper, the actual paper for the election, for the ballot. Okay. So here, now what I want you to understand, hang on, I got to read this for you. So the ballot stock, okay, this is what, now when I was an inspector, I filled this out myself. Okay, I had some of I filled it out, I initialed it, and then I had the poll workers because they were counting, because we have to count the number of pieces of paper when the night that the day or the night before we set up. We have to count the number of papers and we log it in here. In the morning, we count the number of actual sheets of paper, we log it in here, and at the end, we count the number and we log it in here, okay? And then the inspector signs it, okay? So, the early voting centers, meanwhile, there are 28 days of voting in Arizona, 27 early days and election day. No, just focus on the November 8th, because then that's the calendar, right? So, what they're telling us in this public records request, that they don't have any of these for the 27 days that some of the voting centers were there printing ballots for people to fill out to become an early ballot, where they would fold it in the envelope and drop it in the ballot box. They don't have any from election night for the 223 vote centers. This is what keeps track of how much paper is at the voting centers, how much arrives and how much is used and how much leaves the building. They don't have these for the entire election. Again, I'm going to show it to you. This is the paper, what the ballots are on. This is a ballot paper, okay? There are no responsive records for 2318. 2318, I am requesting ballot stock logs from all 223 vote centers for the election for November 8th. They have zero. There is no chain of custody for the paper. For the 27 days that there was early voting at some of the vote centers, then some of them had like 5 or 7 days and then 2 days, 3 days, but it's a 27-day period. And then for the actual election day, there's no documentation.
Incredible.
I can't believe that nobody has brought this forward in a court case. Or let's just say the bad judge wouldn't let the information in, okay? And I can tell you right now, I read the court cases that were originally written by Kerry Lake's attorneys back in December of 2022, right? Anybody can, you pull it up, it's public. And I read all the counts that they had. And I did this. I'm still waiting for the evidence. Where's the crime and where's the real evidence that's sitting on my desk that are all public documents? It's not there, okay? So let's just pretend the big bad judge said, no, you can't bring in any of the official election records, returns, and documents into an election contest. Okay, again, it's like trying to play baseball with the ball without the ball. You can't do it. So let's just pretend that didn't happen. How come nobody who said the word election integrity here in Maricopa asked for your money, candidates, groups, AZ, GOP, MCRC, RNC, freedom groups, they're fighting for you, never even brought this out? Okay, are you kidding me? There is no paperwork. There's nothing to keep track of the ballots, the actual ballots. And you're talking hundreds of thousands of ballots. There was 248,070 ballots that they reported, and that's not the actual number because it doesn't match. Okay, it doesn't match the actual election returns. That's how many ballots they reported were cast on election night. They approved an additional 2,954 provisional ballots that go in the envelopes, right? And then on election day, they claim, but there's nothing to back it up, because I'm going to make it even worse on the next document. They claim that there was, oh, I didn't bring with me. It's 290,000 and change, 290,000 and change, which is the amount of early ballots that were dropped off on election day in the envelopes on election day. So that's another 290,000. So you're at 548,000. That's not including all the ballots that were dropped off or printed there before election day, going back 27 days. So there's nothing to keep track of any of this. So you have no idea. There's nothing to prove that number is correct. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, as I'm listening to this and I'm seeing the evidence presented here clearly from their own pulpit. I guess what I'm finding myself wondering, and I'm not a legal scholar, but have we not also inherently violated the standing law by being unable to provide such records inside of the 22-month window?
Well, they got these to me before the 22-month mark was up, because I contacted them when I realized, oh my God, we're at the 22-month mark, which was on Wednesday. We're 3 days to go. So I sent them the email saying, I need these. And I mentioned that the 22-month mark was in there in my email to them. And then that's when I posted it on Twitter and told everybody and their mother, go ahead, start requesting it. It takes a minute. Just get the records out there, because people need to see this for themselves. Now there are people that did put in public records requests. They got the same thing that I did, so they can actually see it for themselves. So as far as, they did provide it, but then they also told you, we don't have it. So I have everything that they could possibly give us, because it says it in the second email right here. Because let me show this first. So here is the list. Here is the list. There was 13, okay, 13. But this was the 7 additional ones that the documentations they sent me actually were very juicy, okay? Oh, that's what I'm going to come back and share that when we do the show either later this week or next week. Because this is like almost a 3-part deal, because this is the climax. This is everything, because I need to show you guys everything. It needs to get out there, and we need to stop this. It needs to stop. People need to go to prison like now. Okay, so this is 7 that they said, we don't have anything. You have everything. You have everything that we can give to you. So there was 7 that I asked for information that they're still missing the documents, and they're important. I'm going to show you one of them here in a second. And but what they did send me, some of it is useless, where they're claiming this is an inventory report. Well, there's no times. So there's no way to prove that you didn't make this document yesterday. Okay, so most of the documentation that they sent was something that they could have created last night. So it doesn't, what is it really? It means nothing. And there's one that actually had a date of, was their inventory report at night, which doesn't make any sense, because there's like a lot of the serial numbers that are on there don't match, because I just looked them up. I have them on the precinct ballot report. So they don't match. So I don't know what magical serial numbers attached to these security strips, those tie wraps. They're not the ones on the precinct ballot report that left the building, because you can compare the two. It's not hard. And they even gave you the precinct ballot reports in this public records request. And but there's 2 sets of absolutely beautiful Christmas presents that arrived in that set, and I'm going to share that with you. Not today, the next one, but look at this. Look at this. Okay. So this form right here, I want you to see this form. This is the early voting transport statement. Okay. Now, remember, early voting. Early voting is, again, there's 27 days of early voting. Some of these vote centers are open 27 days. Some are open. I have to look it up again, but it's still, they're open up certain amount of days, 5, 7, and then 3, 2, things like that. And then election day. So the early vote ballot transport statement, this is to be completed by the ballot couriers. Now, the ballot couriers are these people that every day, and sometimes throughout the day, because we saw it happening throughout the day, when people were filling out the goldenrod reports. Remember the incident reports? Well, and some of them were actually picking up ballots and they weren't supposed to. So we have, that's a whole another problem, but let's just focus on what they're supposed to fill out when they picked up the ballots. So the ballot couriers were coming sometimes throughout the day to pick up ballots, the early ballots that were dropped off because they were printing them out. Or if you had one from home, a mail-in ballot, the most dangerous ballot you could ever cast in your entire life. And you came in and you dropped it off in the box, put it in the envelope, or you had them printed out there, you filled it out there, filled it up, put it in your envelope, you dropped it off in the box, okay? So these ballot couriers were coming, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes just the end of the day, to gather the ballots and then take them back to, according to this form, MTEC. Could be Runback, could be MTEC, doesn't matter. I don't use the word Runback because they're irrelevant. They are one of the Lee Harvey Oswalds of the election process. Totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. We have so many dead bodies piling up, rotting in our own living rooms. We don't need to test the blood to make sure it's dead. That's the Runback. Okay, so early voting transport statement. You're supposed to put on here the information of the voting center that you go pick it up. And then the seals, because they're supposed to be in boxes, because they just can't be like in a bag. Can't be just like, in a bag of ballots. There has to be security seals, right? Your chain of custody. Your chain of custody, because you gotta make sure that nobody can get their little grubby hands in there, take them out or add more. This is supposed to be filled out every time they pick up ballots. For the whole time, early ballots, not on election day. So if you notice on here, I'll zoom in so you can see a little bit better. There is no number total of ballots, which is interesting. So they're picking up ballots, but they are not logging in how many ballots there are. So we have no records. The records that are actually supposed to be completed, that there is no records because the county's telling you, they don't even contain the number of the item that you're supposed to be picking up because they don't want that number to be there. That's why the check-in number was never on the precinct ballot report. That's why the number of provisional ballots was never something that we logged in, even though it was required by law, even though it was required by the Elections Procedures Manual. Or the total number of ballots that were at the voting center is required by law to be counted before they leave the building. It's supposed to be on the precinct ballot report. It's not even a line item because they don't want you to know those numbers, because they make up the numbers and then they don't have the documentation to prove it. So not only do the forms not have the required law or Elections Procedures Manual by their standards, the number on there, now they're telling you, we don't even have the documents. So this document right here, early voting transport statement, they don't have any. They don't have any for the entire election day and early ballots, because right here, okay, here is my response to them, 2356. I am requesting, this is from March 11th, 2356, because they weren't in that original batch. So my second email to them saying that these are the 7 that are missing public records, 2356 was one of them. I'm requesting any and all early voting ballot transport statements and or ballot transport statements for the November 8, 2022 election from all 223 vote centers, including any early voting ballot transport statements and or ballot transport statements that were completed on election day, November 8th, 2022. And their response, you have received all the responsive documents for your request. So they do not have any of these for the entire election.
Incredible. Now, Ms. Swinick, I want to stop here just for a moment. I'm tracking with this. It's just a huge amount of information, and it's so obviously violative of what you would consider to be common sense black letter law. But I'm going to ask just a stupid question for everyone out there, and that is this. With respect to the maintenance of records, when we're talking about ballot statements, transport statements, check-in logs, sitebook logs, etc., where can you point us to, either in their corporate infrastructure of regulations, ordinances, and codes, or the legal infrastructure of Arizona and their revised statute landscape? What are the violations here that we're actually dealing with?
Well, on these particular forms, okay, the violation of the site book or the check-ins, that was 16602. We've made a big deal about that. That's why they put the check-in number on the actual precinct ballot report for the PPE election in 2024 in March. They changed it. That was pretty much their admission of guilt that it wasn't on there before. So that's a violation of 16602, okay? That's a non-technical statutes. When those laws, non-technical statutes are violated, elections are set aside, like no questions asked, right? There's precedent in Arizona, Miller versus Picacho from September of 1994. So that's a violation of that. That has to do with the amount of people that checked in. Now there's other ones that they violated in here that have to do with the site book check-ins too, because there's multiple reports that were supposed to be done, okay? Like here, let me give you another one, and then I want to show you the, let me just do the site book real quick, because you asked about law, and then I'm going to show you this with the ballot paper. Now, the ballot paper, hold on, I don't want to give everybody too much. I'm already giving you guys too much, but there's just so much, and we don't have a lot of time, okay? That's why this needs to get out there. So as far as the site books, there was another statute that was violated, which is 16-608. Statutes are Arizona law, okay? Arizona revised statutes, it's ARS, and then it's in the election, it's 16 is the chapter, and then the dash, and then it's the actual statute, individual law, right? So in public records request number 2355, Arizona 16-608A, right, A, after the close of the polls and after compliance with section 16602, right? Because that's the judge writes the report, compare the total votes check-in versus the amount of ballots cast, right? The members of the election board are the poll workers at each of the voting centers, shall prepare a report in duplicate, 2 copies, of the number of voters who have voted and as indicated on the poll list, and place this report in the ballot box or metal container. So that's one of the things that they said we don't have either, okay? So that's another law that was broken in regards to the amount of people that had checked in to vote just by their response here. So as far as the Elections Procedures Manual, it's required the number of check-ins, and we went through this when we were talking about 1602, it's required as part of the Elections Procedures Manual, okay? And it's a must. Okay, it's must, like you're gonna see, this is must, okay? Must do this, must include this. So it's a violation statute, now multiple statutes, and the Elections Procedures Manual. Let's look at the ballot stock log, because I was looking in law for any requirement to have the ballot stock or the ballot stock, meaning ballot stock is the actual piece of paper, okay? See, I looked in statute yesterday to see if there was anything, there's something that kind of, but it wasn't solid, so I didn't bring it out today. I have to look even further, but it's in the Elections Procedures Manual. Again, statute is first, Elections Procedures Manual is second, which is by the Secretary of State, and then the Procedures Manual, the training manuals for the county is third. You can add to the process and rules, you cannot subtract from. Okay, so if the law says the law, you have to do it. You can't say, well, the Elections Procedures Manual didn't say it. No. Doesn't matter. The law says it, and it flows downhill, okay? So in the Elections Procedure, then we're talking about the ballot stock, the ballot pieces of paper, okay? Don't have records of any of it, at any vote center for the whole time. That's including early ballots. Now this says, this is chapter 9, okay? This is chapter 9. And the page before says must do this. Inventory the ballots received, or inventory the ballots received from the Elections Department, including ballot stock. Okay, this is the voting center. This is requirements. Notice this is at the voting center on election night, right?
These
Here
are
it is.
their own rules.
This is the Elections Procedures Manual from the Secretary of State. Secretary of State, this is for 2019, which they used for 20 and 2022. So conduct of elections, elections day operation, setting up the voting center. So this is that section, all chapter 9 is what is required of the voting centers when they are open for the election, whether it's early voting or it is election day. This is primarily more written for election day, but you pick the parts that you need that are obviously can't happen on the early days, but they're there for the actual election day. But inventory the ballots received from the Elections Department, because some of them were now it's all print on demand in Maricopa, but it was written before where some of them came pre-printed, right? Before they came up with these big voting centers. When you were in the precincts, they were pre-printed because you only had one ballot per precinct, okay? Now you have 50,000 different versions of it because anybody from anywhere in the county can conveniently go to vote at any vote center. What could go wrong? So inventory the ballots received from the Elections Department, including the ballot stock. It's required, okay? They don't have any of the forms. So, and on the closeout duties, okay, now this is chapter 9 still, conduct of elections, election day operation. The closeout duties, you guys have seen this before when we were talking about Arizona 16564, which is the total ballots all the ballots need to be counted before they leave the building. That was violated 223 vote centers. Right then and there, enough to set the election aside because you have no idea how many ballots have left the building. Okay, Elvis, building, ballots, no idea. So the election board closeout duties. The information, and in here, it's required to have the number of people that checked in to vote. That's your poll list, right? Look, number of voters who signed in the signature.
Ms. Swinick, I do apologize. There's been an audio interference or some sort of disconnection there. I lost you for a moment. Give me a second. I'm going to try something here. I apologize for the audience out there. Please bear with us just a moment. It's not uncommon for these types of conversations to have significant interference. All right, Ms. Swinick, if you could, please try to unmute your microphone now, and we may be able to salvage this yet. I apologize. We are still cut out there. Give me just another moment. Oh, sounded like we had something there. Nope, it's gone again. I apologize. It's so interesting that we should have this particular issue come up in the middle of what is the most important part of the conversation here, because you're fundamentally talking about the black letter law violation that they have now admitted to from the information that they've submitted to you, which would be enough cause in and of its own right to redo the entirety of that election and any election forward from that. Give me a moment here. And we are back after a short edit.
Short. Okay. So we were talking about the elections procedures manual. And this is the election board closeout duties. As I mentioned before, you guys have seen this before when we were talking about the other statute violations. But I wanted to just point out, and I'll make it real big. The information from this audit must be recorded on the official ballot report form as provided by the officer. Instructions must include total number of printed ballots or estimated number of ballot stock received from the officer in charge of elections. Okay, ballot stock, estimated number of ballot stock received. It is not, this information is supposed to be on the PBR, precinct ballot report, right? It's not. There's other stuff that are required by the elections procedures manual that are not on the precinct ballot report in Maricopa County. Okay, that's a violation of their own rules. Nobody seemed to do anything. Nobody seemed to care. But I'm pointing this out because it does reference ballot stock. So let's just say, it's even though it's not on the official ballot report form, it's on that ballot stock log, which doesn't exist. The county has no records from all of the 223 vote centers for the early ballots and the election day ballots. I want to put it up on the screen one more time so you can see. That's the early ballot transport. So when the guys come pick it up, no documentation. They just take it, whomever, where. They have no idea how many are leaving. No idea how many are leaving. There's no record. There is no record. Let me show you this one again. Ballot stock log. There is no record of anywhere that's actually written on a piece of paper. so that they could lose the piece of paper that they're telling you that they don't have, of how many ballots of early ballots were actually picked up at the voting centers, that were dropped off the voting centers, then picked up by these couriers for those 27 days, and including election day. There's no record of any of this. Look, nobody even got a chance to write it down on anything. Right?
Remarkable.
And you're talking over, they reported 290,000 and change on election day, and no mention of how many were done in those 27 days. Okay? Just whatever number they want. And everybody seems to be okay with this. This is not an election. This is a crime scene. Okay? This is a crime scene. This is a crime scene. All right, so let me give you a recap. I'm going to give you a couple other ones here. We probably might not even get to 2024 today, which is okay. You can watch that on video, and then you'll be prepared for next week, because this stuff's major. Okay, this is where you need to basically just stop the elections. People need to be picked up today and go to prison. Okay, that's and arrested. You need to have arrests right now, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But let me just shine these suckers up so I can see. All right, so this is the 7 outstanding that they told me. You have all of our records, Michelle. Everything that we have that you've asked for, you've got, which these are 7 are now missing. Now this one here, the first one, I'm going to save that for when I come back. Okay, I'm save that for when I come back, because that one's that you're not going to believe that one. All right, so we're going to save that. It has to do with the daily ballot processing summaries. Now, a little teaser. It's the ballots that were actually processed at McTech, all the early ballots going back in October through when they stopped counting and tabulating on the 21st of November. Okay, so I have those log files, and now I have their daily processing summaries. There's things missing, and some of the numbers match, some of the numbers don't match. And that's your clue. All right, little nugget. So as far as 2378, we went over that. 2360, there are no written records that the correct vote totals for each candidate were issued and transmitted to the polling place, from the polling place to the election management system. So these are other additional chain of custodies documents that is part of their audit, okay? The Audit and Reconciliation Board. It's not an audit. It's basically, they're supposed to look at certain things, and obviously they don't look at them because then they would be pointing these things out, right? But this is what MTech, Scott Jarrett, the elections director, for those of you who've seen the video that I put together to explain the illegal recount and the erasing of the ballots during the primary election that happened on August 3rd of 2024, just a month ago, okay, that nobody in Arizona seems to want to acknowledge, considering we just had another illegal election. There should have been election contests by every single candidate, whether you won or lost, because the election needs to be set aside because it was illegal. Okay, and I'm not. If we don't, that video, I'm going to plug the video right now because I'm looking at the time. Episode number 309 on our Rumble channel, which is Save My Freedom on Rumble. Save My Freedom on Rumble. And also, if you go to savemyfreedom.us, savemyfreedom.us, I have my sign. Hold on. Oh, it's over here. My trusty sign. Right? Don't do the texting because I can't afford to do the text. So it's savemyfreedom.us. It's a little beat up, like me, beat up. Savemyfreedom.us. That I just did a Substack. The pin post has the video, has the short clips, has the call to action on what needs to be done. And it has all the information, including the press release for the illegal recount that was done on the 2024 primary. That literally everybody's silent on. The Arizona GOP, all of the candidates, all of the MAGA, America First people, okay? And the legislator, the sheriffs, any elected officials in Arizona, people that were elected, the MCRC, the Maricopa County Republican Committee, the RNC, every freedom group, every election integrity group, other groups in Arizona, nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. And you have proof now on camera where Scott Jarrett and the election crew that he was working with, the election workers, on Saturday, They wheeled out those black bags. I counted anywhere between 18 and 20, right? Because I was watching it live. That's how I have this, the video that I have. It's their video, okay? Because, let me explain this real quick. Or should I'm jumping around. I'm jumping around, I apologize. It's just, there's so much. So let me explain, let me put a pin in that. I'm gonna do a timeout. Put a timeout. That's a teaser, but it's really not. You can watch it, but go to savemyfreedom.us and subscribe. That pinned post has everything in it. The video's in there too. I started it off with the video. So you need to understand that. And I'm going to go back to it here in a second. I just got to watch the time. I want to focus back on these public records requests because this is criminal. Okay. And it's potential fraud. If they've provided numbers that are not accurate, they have nothing to back it up, including a report sending this documentation as a response to the Assistant Attorney General's letter going back to the 19th of November when Jennifer Wright, who's the Assistant Attorney General at the time, for Mark Brnovich, all Republicans, big R. Then the response that the county had, Tom Liddy, Dad G. Gordon Liddy, his response back to her, providing all of this document, well, their versions of documentation, nothing to back it up, just Excel spreadsheets and forms that I made today that looks like, okay? So let's just go back to this for a second because this is important. All right, so there was no documentation provided for 2316, which is there are no written records that correct the vote totals for each candidate. Oh, that record that the correct vote totals for each candidate were transmitted from the polling place to the election management system. There's no documentation for that. And that's part of what the audit board, Scott Jarrett's audit and reconciliation board, is supposed to be looking at each of the vote centers when they are cross-referencing.
I apologize again, Ms. Swinick. We have lost the audio feed once more. Perhaps if we try a quick reconciliation with our last time used tactic, we may. I apologize. We are still unable to hear. Just for the audience out there, this is one of the more heavily attacked conversations that we've ever had here on the Q News Patriot audio chat. And it's because we're showcasing in real time the activities that are occurring. Sound check 1, 2, if we
How about
could
that?
There
3,
we
4.
are.
Yes,
Welcome
no?
back.
Yes. We got you. I rebuke you, demons, in the name of Jesus from my show. Leave SG alone. There you go. Leave the man alone. Okay, so no written record that the correct vote totals for each candidate and issue were transmitted from the polling place to the election management system. Again, these are things that were supposed to be done at the elections centers so that the audit board could cross-reference when they were doing their audit process after the election for all the vote centers. So they're telling me they don't have these. Again, I just cut and pasted this directly from the Elections Procedures Manual, and I mentioned it there, Chapter 10, Section H, Audit Board number 7, page 211. Can't be more clear, right? Just cut and paste. I didn't even change anything. Now, the next one, 2358. That one, there was supposed to be copies of the transmitted precinct, which now is voting centers, results from the election management system. Okay, so they were supposed to receive, this is the election board and reconciliation, we're supposed to receive a copy of the transmitted precinct results, the voting center results from the elections management system. There's no copies of that. Okay, they don't have that because they don't want me to see it. They don't want anyone to see it. This is public. These are public documents. Number 2357. They were supposed to be a sheet or report, and oh, this one's are good. Okay, this one. This is important. And I knew this was coming. That's why I sent it. Arizona 16-564F1, okay? 564 is the A says that all ballots need to be counted before the ballot box leaves the building. We know that didn't happen. That is the number one most important statute in the state of Arizona, non-technical statute. Elections should be set aside just for that. This one, F1, during the course of an election day, if the ballot can no longer accommodate ballots, the board members, election poll workers, may remove a sufficient number of ballots from the ballot box and place and shall place the removed ballots into the case that will be used for the transfer of the ballots to the officer in charge of elections. And this should have been the black bags, okay, the black bags. The inspector and both judges, yes, that's me, remember? We're supposed to oversee the transfer, and following shall apply. An immediate count of the number of ballots removed shall be made by the election board members, and a sheet indicating the count and signed by the members supervising the count shall be placed in the transfer case, which is the black bags with the removed ballots, and shall be kept sealed for the remainder of the election. I am requesting any of these sheets in these reports. So I knew that they didn't have these. I knew they weren't done because at my vote center, the Islamic Center of Scottsdale, I was told this happened 3 times at my center. Now, I was not included in this process. So I'm supposed to be. Both judges, inspector and both judges. Okay, this is statute. Because anytime, the only time that you are allowed to open a ballot box during an election is to remove ballots when it's full. And this was primarily for door number 3, okay? So you are not you are not allowed to open the ballot box. Now, when there is a paper jam in these machines, which do not tabulate correctly, and we have proven that with their own documents, they do not tabulate correctly, okay? The numbers do not match. So whenever anyone has a paper jam in a tabulator, which is a known issue in Dominion's manual, what they instruct you to do is pick up the machine, which then exposes the ballot box, which now the ballot box, the slot where the ballot goes through, that's cut out like in an X-Acto knife cut out on these big blue bins, which are just plastic, like a weird Rubbermaid. Like Rubbermaid's nicer. I don't know what these are made of. It's just a little hole cut out for the ballot to, when it goes through the ballot, the tabulator drops down into the box, nothing fancy, okay? So when you lift that machine up during the election, you have broken the law as a poll worker. These machines force the poll workers to break the law every single time, this law right here, every single time they pick up the machine, exposing the ballot box to be open, because now the hole is open, people could put in whatever, and pulling out the piece of paper. So the machines, A, we've proven they don't tabulate correctly. B, force poll workers to break the law to remove the paper jam. So if you want to get rid of the machines, don't worry about all this other noise to get rid of the machines. Oh, they're connected to the internet. Who cares? You're seeing enough right now. We haven't even talked about the machines. Look at the crimes that are being committed, the fraud, the election fraud, the maladministration, the malfeasance, literally breaking the law. We haven't even mentioned the machines, okay? Machines are the least of your concerns of the crimes that are being committed in the actual elections, because the difference between what the machines reported and what the actual was, because there's a difference. Remember, the front of the machine doesn't match the actual tally receipts. And Dominion tells you to use the one on the front. County tells you, and the elections procedures manual tells you to use the tape. They don't match. We've already proven to you. I've shown every single one. They don't match, right? And we have those numbers. 15.5% of the tabulators, the public counter doesn't match the tape. 15%, 15.5% of them in the election, okay? They don't match. Front doesn't match, and it's the same machine, okay? So there's your argument. You want to get rid of machines. They break the law, okay? So this is the only time that you're allowed to go ahead and open the ballot box. But we knew that at my vote center, I told it was 3, but I couldn't mention it because I had no proof. And then we found that goldenrod report written by my inspector, where Scott Jarrett, the director of elections, and on election day and tabulation, you'll see him all over that video, episode 309, committing the crime of an illegal recount on the August 3rd of 2024. He instructed her to take the ballots out of door number 3, count them, there were 79, and take them and illegally put them into the ballot box with the portion of all the ballots that were already tabulated through the machine. That's called commingling. That is against the law. So right there, you had 79 disenfranchised voters. That's just what we had based on the goldenrod report that my inspector, Penny, filled out herself, okay? So you want to talk about voter disenfranchisement? That's 79 just that we can prove on one document, not including the 11 that we show that we can prove that were commingled. The 11 vote centers that we could prove were commingled, yet the county said there was only 2. I could prove 11 just based on testimonials that were in exhibits in Carrie Lake's case that were never brought into the court trial. They were never brought into the actual written part of the case. They're stuck in the back in like the exhibit section that nobody knows about. We did a whole show on episode 282, I believe. So my point is right here, and I knew that these reports wouldn't exist because I was supposed to be there. Okay. So now they're telling me we don't have these either. And there's tons of testimonials, written affidavits, sworn affidavits that people sent in that say that, or poll workers and poll observers, that they were opening ballot boxes, taking out ballots because they were overflowing. Some were in they put them on the ground, some were in black bags, some were in bins. There was like 3, 4, 5 bins of just ballots just all over the place, and garbage bags. Okay, garbage bags. Okay, I'm not making this up. I've either shown it to you in a show or we put it on Twitter. I'm gonna put more out because they found another in stuff that they sent me. The county just sent me. They sent the like the transfer statements. Okay. So when the poll workers, which during the PPE election, when I was the inspector, I went in the car with 2 other people because it has to be bipartisan. They love the word, whenever they say it has to be bipartisan or they mention a bipartisan team, that means there's a crime being committed because they always use that phrase in there when you know, keep reading because what's going to happen next is really bad, right? Because they're, but they were both there. I said, well, both there to witness the crime, I guess, or be a part of it. So when we got to the drop-off location, which usually was another voting center, okay, sometimes it's direct to MTech, depending on the location of the voting center, if it's close. Sometimes what it'll be is a voting location, another voting location that was close, so like 3, 4, 5, 7 of them go and drop off somewhere, and then the truck is there, like these Penske rental trucks, and then they take, not the machines are at the center still, because somebody picks them up in a day, 2, 3 days later. All of the rest of the ballots, the black bags, the red boxes, the blue boxes, and all the other stuff that we bring, right? So there's a statement, like an inventory list. There's supposed to be 223. I got 217. So there's 6 missing. I haven't looked yet to see which voting center was missing. Now I just briefed through these, and there was one that said we received 2 garbage bags of ballots. Okay, this is written. Somebody wrote it, which I'm glad they wrote it because it was the truth. But if you also look, there's lots of security seals that were missing. There are some had 3 black bags, some had 2 black bags, some only had 1 black bag, which means they're commingled. Okay. Or it could mean that commingled, but we've proven that some of those that actually said that they were commingled. But what was interesting on some of them, on the top, it said memory card. And it said the memory card are in the tabulators, okay? That's the data. That's your entire election, okay? The tapes are one thing, but the memory card is what comes out of each tabulator. Each tabulator has its own memory card. At each tabulator station, remember there was 35 additional tabulators that nobody mentions that we found, right? Because you just look at the serial numbers that were active in these elections. I'm still trying to figure out how, because it's a physical tabulator. So there was 35, and at Yunker High School, there was 6. So you mean to tell me people didn't notice that there were 6 additional, or what was 2 there, but 4 additional, there was a total of 6 that were wheeled in and nobody knew, like in the coat with the whatever, and here's the tabulator and they put it on. It's just mind blowing to me, okay? But anyway, on this sheet, you should have 2 memory cards, 2 tabulators, 2 tabulator stations, because when you change tabulators, which we've shown you guys, so they've done that, there's 35 additional ones that literally nobody mentioned. And Scott Jarrett lied on the stand when he said that there was only 446. There was an additional 35. So there's 481 total that we have found. So when you take the memory card out and you put it into the new tabulator, which is totally part of the process, it just needs to be done the right way. And most of the time it was not, because you can see it in slog files, and you could see it on the tally receipts, the tapes that come off the machines. You have one for each, so you should have two for each vote center. So on these sheets, sometimes there's none. Sometimes there's one, and then sometimes there's two. But there were a lot where there was no memory card on the inventory sheet. Now, these are the poll workers taking the supplies, dropping it off to the transport station, which I don't like how it's done, but it's okay if it's done the right way and documented. And then somebody's filling this out. And then this is, that's a chain of custody record, right? Because you're taking all of this stuff from the election center, voting center, and giving it to the person who's doing the transport. And there was like a team of people there, right? It was late at night, but I was okay-ish with it. It was one of the better, more organized of the whole cluster of the election. But there was a lot where there was nothing there written for the memory card, or there was one. There needs to be two. So that's a whole nother chapter. But I just wanted to point that out because that was in the batch. So because we were talking about the additional ballots, the ballots being taken out. Okay, so we knew that I knew I wasn't going to get that because I was supposed to be there, and we didn't do it at our center, which means it's not part of the process. But it is the law that broke the law. Number 2356. That's your early ballot transport statement. Okay, there's no documentation of that. And 2355, that was another law broken, part of 16602, which is the check-ins that we were supposed to do another report in duplicate for the number of voters who have voted. Okay, so those are the 7 that are outstanding. Now, how much time? We have probably no more time left, right?
We're working with about 10 to 12 more minutes.
Okay, so let me leave on a positive note. And then we'll go do some questions and stuff, and maybe I can do a little dazzle of 2024. So that's the most recent things that just happened. This just happened Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, so that's what's brand new, and I wanted to bring you guys to that. Now, as I said, the other documents that are in there, we're going to do that in the next show, because you need to understand the counting at MTech for October and November, but what we're going to do, I'm going to hopefully have it ready for the whole thing for the next show. If not, we'll go into a third one, because what was done when they did the first launching of the numbers on November 8th through the 21st of November, there's major problems with those numbers. Okay, they don't add up. They don't add up. What they tell you on what's done and tabulated, not to mention on their own reports, doesn't add up. And you're talking tens of thousands, 20,000. It's depending on which day, you've got swings, 25,000, 90,000, 70,000. Okay. So that's the next show. So you need to make sure that you tune in for that. But good news. Okay. Good news. Good news is, let me do the recap first before I give you the good news. Okay. So this is just a recap of the November 8th election that has almost no chain of custody for everything. No chain of custody. There is no way to prove any of the numbers the county is reporting is legitimate. Here we go. There is no, how many voters have checked into the 223 vote centers on election day? There's no record of that. Now, these are things do not have any records of. There's nothing to verify this information, and it is required. Okay. How many election day ballots left the 223 vote centers on election day? How many late drop-offs, early ballots, which are the ones they drop in the bins? Early voters come in. They don't want to run through the tabulators, but they still want to cast their vote at the voting center. It doesn't matter. Early ballot, early, worst, most dangerous ever that you can do. How many of those were dropped off or left the voting centers? That's 223 on election day. They told you there was 290,000 and change. There's no record of how many provisional ballots left the building on 220 of the 223 vote centers on election day. There is no record of how many ballots were dropped off each day during the open early voting centers for those 27 days and were picked up by the ballot couriers during those 27 days. There's no chain of custody records. Oh, here's one. There's no chain of custody records for door number 3 for 12 voting centers. So 12 voting centers for the door number 3 number, it's blank on the precinct ballot report. Okay. So that's chain of custody too. So there's no record of how many ballots were in that bin for door number 3. And we can also, we have proven in other episodes that the number that they told you that were in door number 3 was not correct. Okay. It's not correct because one of them at, I think it was University. I'm a little rusty on my names. They had the ballot box. There was no door in between for 11 hours. So for 11 hours, the ballots that were being dropped into door number 3, going over into the tabulated section because it's only a flimsy little piece of cardboard, and until they opened the ballot box because they had some tech issue with the tabulators, which again violates the law with this paper jam problem. They realized that there was no divider. So you have 11 hours of ballots flopping, and you'd say, well, how many ballots did the PBR say? Well, they said it was 28 or 29. Yeah, from 5 o'clock on. But for those 11 hours prior to that, the ballots were being commingled. And you'd say, well, maybe it was only a handful. Well, the problem was there was 1,800 and I believe 90 or 1,870 ballots that were rejected. So let's just say you put it in a couple times, whatever, flip it over, whatever, but 1,870, let's just say you did it 4 times divided by 4. Let's just say you did it 10 times, still 180. Okay, so that's there's a change. So there was 12 public precinct ballot reports that are blank. Okay, remember they in one of the situations, they wrote on there, told not to count. Too many told not to count. So somebody told a poll worker, which is a violation of ARS 16-1004, which is if you interfere with a poll worker's duties, it is a class 5 felony. So somebody told that poll worker at Sun Lakes to not count. Okay, but there were 12 blank spots for door number 3 ballots. Okay, so that's no chain of custody either. All right. And then there are no ballot stock logs, inventory sheets from all voting centers for the 27 days of early voting, plus the 223 election day centers. So there is no record of how much blank ballot paper got to the voting centers, were used at the voting center, and were left over at the voting centers. Okay, so that's your summary from today. No chain of custody for the whole. And many more laws were actually violated, all admitted to by the county. And they don't even have any records from the actual site books, which brings the problem of the check-ins to a whole new level. But good news. Good news. Good news is there are lawsuits that can be brought for this, but as far as this breaking law and this stuff is brand new. Okay, so I'm going to talk to some people and figure out what needs to be done, because this level of criminality has gone to the next level with the chain of custody issues and the breaking of these additional laws, other than the things that we've just been showing you, and then what I'm going to show you in the next episode, because there is potentially just a little under 18,000 ballots that were tabulated and counted at MTech and never showed up on the Canvas report. All right, we're going to fine tune those numbers because there's 2 ways to look at it. And their ballot reporting processing forms that they sent me happen to match my spreadsheet. Exactly. Okay. I did the spreadsheet. I went to every single ballot that was run through, going back for the whole month of October, the whole month of November, and my spreadsheets matches what needs to match on their ballot reports. And there's a difference of just under 18,000 that didn't make the Canvas report. But we're going to fine tune those numbers for you guys. But lawsuits can be brought. Lawsuits can be brought. Amicus briefs, writs of mandamus, and a civil rights lawsuit, because they violated my civil rights by approving me the cast vote records, giving it to other people, telling me that they were coming, that they just needed to redact it, and then all of a sudden I'm no longer allowed to get them. That's a violation of my civil rights, pretty cut clear, because as it stands right now, And I proved it. So I showed them, you approved this person, but you violated my civil rights. I can't get them because maybe I was a little too loud in providing documentation for people. They said, no, we changed our mind. They're no longer public. Well, guess what? Somebody, the same guy who had showed me that he got them, he showed me his public records request, which I used it to the county. He requested them for the primary and he got denied. They said they are no longer public documents. So nobody in the country can get the cast vote records, which show you the actual, not who voted, but who they voted for. So you can actually compare the number of ballots cast for a candidate and make sure it matches the tally receipt, because it takes, and you're not looking at the image, you don't care about the image of the ballot, you just want the data. So, you'll have, let's just say Trump, this number, and whomever's in the spot of Kamala, if it is her, how many that person got for that vote center, okay? Nobody in the country is entitled to those documentations apparently now in Maricopa County. I am the only person that can bring a lawsuit against them because they did approve me, had multiple correspondence with me. And then when I asked them for it again over a month, like 4-month, 5-month period, and showed them that somebody else, I have proof that they were approved. Meanwhile, the candidates had these cast vote records. And then I got denied. Hey, that's a violation of civil rights. I'm literally the only person in the country that can bring a lawsuit that has teeth to get Arizona in a situation where they're going to be forced to give the cast vote records, which are public documents, and make them public, because right now Trump can't get those. Okay, Trump can't get those. And I've been trying to get a hold of somebody over in his camp to explain this to them. Okay, and any of the candidates need these documents, because then otherwise you can't, it's bad enough you can't cross-reference your whole election. But at least this is one of the things. But writs of mandamus are done. So the courts are then requiring an entity to follow the law, right? So I've calculated anywhere between 10 and 15 lawsuits that can be filed with all of the information that we have exposed so far, which is the county's official election records, returns, and documents, which none of this information was ever brought into court by any of the candidates or by any of the groups, or America First Legal and all these other groups that have been doing all these lawsuits and grifting money going way back to the 2020 election. None of this has ever been brought into a lawsuit. And this is your election, okay? Again, having an election contest or a lawsuit about elections, because you're contesting the election or your race, how can you even walk into a courtroom if you don't bring this in? It's like trying to play baseball without a ball. You can't do it. It's the most important piece of the entire game. You can get away with making a bat your arm or a stick. You can use a cup for a base or draw it in the dirt. You need the ball. None of these cases have ever brought the ball, okay? You're seeing the ball. You're seeing a big ass ball now, okay? This is it. This is the election. So my ask for everybody out there, okay? I need everybody's support across the country, because the people in Arizona are listening to the fake MAGA and America First leaders that are here, and they're ignoring the crimes that were just committed by our illegal election on the primary election, and they are not acknowledging any of this information because they were told, we've got to get unified, we got to chase the ballot and get out and vote. Well, guess what? Hashtag Vote Harder 2024 isn't a solution. You cannot beat this kind of election fraud and maladministration by just voting harder, by getting your friends to go to the polls, by maybe pushing real hard with your second pen in your oval, okay? Not to mention, in the November 5th election in Arizona, guess what? There's going to be 2 sheets, okay? So you're going to have one sheet of paper that has races and ballot measures and propositions and judges on one side and the other, and then a second sheet of paper with even more of the same. So can you imagine, okay, what a disaster by design November 5th is going to be in Maricopa County with 2 pieces per person? 2 pages. Do you see what they have told you they don't have? They don't keep track of with 1? Okay, not to mention, again, the amount of ballots that didn't make the canvass report, which is completely beyond a crime in itself, that you tabulate ballots and then you just throw them in the garbage, or I don't know where they are. I don't know what happened to them. They didn't make the canvas report. 2 sheets of paper per person. Okay. The people of Arizona don't stand a chance. You will not have, we do not have a legitimate and legal elections in the United States of America. If you think your county's safe, well, you haven't looked, okay? You haven't looked, but it's too late to look. You can look all you want. We have everything here for Maricopa. What needs to happen? One race from 2024 now, because we have proof that that election was illegal, because you cannot just take results from election, decide you don't like them, Scott Jarrett, throw them in the garbage, and 4 days after the election, rerun ballots that were already tabulated through the tabulators to go ahead and do a new election, because what you found 2 ballots, so the numbers were, there was discrepancies or what you call variances. In order to do a recount of ballots that were already counted, which is an election, you need a court order, and it's a violation of ARS 16-662, which requires a court order. Just because you have too many people that checked, your check-in number doesn't match the number of ballots, you have a variance, you make a notation. You don't have, Maricopa and Scott Jarrett does not have the authority to go ahead and decide, we can go ahead and disregard those results, eliminate them, and then redo a whole election, which you see on videotape from August 3rd of 2024. So we don't have any support in Arizona, meaning the handful of people in Arizona who are actually paying attention and are trying to push the information out, we don't have any support here. We don't have any ground game, because the ground game are listening to people that says, don't look back. Don't look at anything that's going wrong. You need to focus on unity, which unifying of what? I don't know. Okay. I'm still waiting. I still don't understand what fighting for you means. And they want you to look forward and go ballot chase, go ballot harvest. You go knock on doors, you go to those meetings and get the vote out. GOTV. OMG is more like it. Getting the vote out is not going to solve the problem. 2020, does anyone remember 2020? That's before you knew all this stuff. Okay, the whole country could have voted for Trump. The whole Arizona could have voted for Trump. He didn't win the results because the results never matched the vote. So what you're seeing right now is you're seeing everyone playing dress up. They're all playing election. They're all doing the same things they did in 2022. They're all doing the same motions that they did in 2020 to before the election. They're like playing house, okay? It's not, because with all of this fraud and maladministration, how could you in your right sane mind think that all of these old tactics that you thought used to work but never seemed to get your candidate over the line, you think that's going to work this time because you turned it up a notch? I just showed you massive amounts of crime, massive amounts of crime. So we need one race in Arizona from 2024, 2022 to be set aside. And we're working on that, but I need to help. I need your help to push out this content, push out what I'm going to be putting out on social media. People need to understand how the election system operation works and focus on Arizona, focus on Maricopa County, and focus on holding accountable all of these people that said they're fighting for you all over the country. And literally put the attention on Maricopa. These people need to be exposed for not doing anything. Your Carrie Lakes, your Abe Hamadeys, your Jennifer Wrights, your Attorney General from the past, your AZGOP, your Gina Saboto, your MCRC, your RNC, Laura Trump. Where are you? Where are all these people with all this money? America First Legal, all of these groups, True the Vote. Pick an election integrity group, a freedom group. Where is everybody? Okay. This is the most dangerous election that's ever going to happen. And it's going to be a complete disaster by design. You cannot have an election. If what needs to be done is everything needs to stop. You cannot have another fraudulent and illegal and illegitimate election in the United States. You had it in 2020. You had it again in 2022. You just had it here in Maricopa on August 3rd when you saw this illegal recount where they changed the results on 2 different days. So who knows how many illegal recounts they ran it through. I just happened to turn it on looking for a screenshot because you can watch what goes on at MTech with all the video cameras that are there. I just happened to watch it live and recorded it on my computer because I was in shock. And I said, this is crazy, because they did it at 44 vote centers in 2022. And I only got a chance to experience it from the slog files and the audit files. This time, I'm watching the crime happen in front of me. So it was like a reverse Law and Order SVU for me, where I'm like, is this happening? I think I'm getting like, remember punked? I'm like, is somebody punking me? Is this really happening? Am I really seeing the stuff that I have been looking at for 22 months and reading it in the only the data files? I'm actually watching it for the first time live. This is the same thing. That's how I knew there was a crime being committed and there was a violation of the law. So I'm just...
Ms. Swinick, I do apologize. We've now had another microphone interruption towards the end of our discussion here. I think it's sort of hilarious, the flavor of our talk today. And I have to say, if Patriots out there, if everyone watching the show tuning in was reflective of the passion, the energy, and the vitality that you bring to this discussion, we would have our elections fixed in 90 minutes here in the United States. I'm very sorry, we cannot hear the audio feed. For the audience out there, thank you very much for bearing with us on our discussion today. I know we're sort of very near the end here, but I want to do a proper send-off for the show. After one last edit, we are back for our closing segment here. Ms. Swinick, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I have to say it's been one of the more fun conversations today that I've had around such serious topics. For Patriots out there that want to connect, learn more, support the work, get involved however they can, where again can they go to find you all and to get in the fight?
Yeah, so this is the call to action for everybody. So I'm going to give you 2 websites. So you're going to go to Save My Freedom, which I mentioned in the beginning, savemyfreedom.us. That is the Substack, but it also, and the pin post is the one that talks about what just happened in 2024. Okay, the illegal recount, the illegal and illegitimate primary that we just had that nobody wants to do anything about. They just want to go on to the next, go on to the next. We can't do that. But I also want you guys, you got to help us, because I'm not getting all the support that I have for the most part comes from out of Arizona, because the people outside of Arizona really understand what's going on and they want to do something about it. People here, not so much. They just want to vote harder. That's not an option. Okay. Even if they did vote harder, it's not going to make a difference, because you're seeing how the election works. So if you can help us out, throw in $5, $10, whatever, tell your friends, go to givesendgo.com with the / right? Save My Freedom. Again, everything Save My Freedom. Throw in a buck, throw in something, tell everybody about this, because we have about 10 to 15 different lawsuits that can be filed, and election lawsuits get expedited. Okay, so don't worry about that. But we're never going to be able to raise enough money to do all of them. Okay, these are, again, writs of mandamus, amicus briefs, and a couple new ones, right? But I'm filing them in order of lowest hanging fruit, the ones that are literally the fruit that's rotting on the ground that I know that can guarantee to win, that'll have the biggest bang for the buck. So as revenue comes in, funds, because I've got to have some of this, I have to have an attorney. Some of it, I have to have a paralegal. Trust me, if I could do it all by myself, I would. I have all the evidence. See, that's the only thing that is so different about these lawsuits or court cases or anything. I have all the evidence because it's all public. I just requested it and I did the work. So that's what needs to be brought to the courts, even if it's something that proves that demands, the court demands that they follow this particular law. It also shows that they didn't follow the law. Okay, because most people don't think that there's any problems. This is massive crime scene. So do what you can, share them with all your friends, and join us on Twitter, everything home T, right? But if you go to savemyfreedom.us, you'll see all of these links are there. I put them all in that Substack. Share that Substack. The videos are in there. The links to the social media, the links to the lawsuits, meaning the give, send, go. I even go into detail about your call to action. You got to hold these people accountable. Carrie Lake, tag her ass all over social media. So what are you doing, right? These people, Carrie Lake, Abe Hamadeh, all these groups, they've raised millions of dollars, okay? Saying they were going to do what I did for everybody. And then I'm still doing it. Nobody's doing this. Nobody kept track of the numbers for the 2024 election that we just had the primary. Because they're like, oh, we won, we're fine. No, you're not fine. It's not about the candidates. Again, your sacred right to choose your representatives, your referendums, your everything in your life was stolen from you by Maricopa County. And the people that allowed it to happen are your MAGA and America First leaders, your MCRC, your AZGOP, your RNC. Your Carrie Lakes, your Abe Hamadehs, your Eli Cranes, your Andy Biggs, your what was the other one? Gosarts, your all these people. They've done nothing. Okay, your whole legislators done nothing. Your sheriffs, Mark Lamb, he wanted to run. He was running in the primary for senator, but yet he can't do anything about the election fraud in Maricopa. Who can you imagine what happened in his own county, Pinal, if this is what Maricopa does? And they just did a watered down version and he's doing nothing. He's a sheriff. He's a sheriff now. Tag his ass. Call his ass up in his office and say, what are you doing? Okay, until the American people, and it has to be the country because it's all about volume, right? Got to get real loud. And there's got to be a lot of us, right? A lot of us. I don't mean millions. Again, you don't need to leave your house. You don't have to get out of bed. So you can text them, you can tag them on social media, all the different platforms. You can go ahead and call them. What are you doing about this massive amount of election fraud and maladministration and criminality and crimes that were broken from 2022 and now 2024? Again, this is the only time in your life that you will be able to win every single argument because all of the information is the county's official election records and returns. You now have video. And I explain it all in there. That's on the Rumble, episode 309, plus it's in the Substack. So go have fun with it. Call them up. Go get them, guys. This is it. It doesn't matter what state you're from. These people are criminals. They're either protecting the crime or they committed the crime at this point. And they're allowing it to happen because it's going to be a disaster. We cannot have elections moving forward until this stops. People go to jail, prison, and you have the election system needs to completely change. You need to, if you want to have a real election, you need to stop everything. The people in these positions that operate, oversee, and certify, which is your election directors and your board of supervisors, bye-bye, bye-bye. You need to go. You need to have somebody in there that is running a real election where there's a process for auditing, because you have, and the process is simple. The actual things they have you do, except for some of the laws are a little squirrely, they're just not laws, the actual ones that they've destroyed. Okay, you can thank our legislator for doing that. Alex Cullinan, HB 2785, has destroyed the signature verification process for Arizona for the upcoming, for all future elections. This is all we got. Okay, this is it. You're hanging on by a thread. Remember the cat on the rope? Hang in there. Oh shit, cat. Remember that? That's us. We're hanging on by a little thread. So please join us in Arizona. All of the information I always put is on Twitter. That's the only social media I'm on. But grab that and take it. Take it and go else places. Take that Substack. Push it out there. Understand what's going on here. This is it. This is the last hill. There's nothing else left. There's nothing else left. And it all can happen very, very quickly. Again, there's 2 lawsuits. I'm not going to bring up what they are or who's in, but it's here in Arizona, right? It's here in Arizona. But I need to file things with those. Okay, with this information needs to be attached to those. So I need money to do that. Okay, need to do that because I got to get an attorney to do that. And I have to do it soon, like ASAP, because both of them have been active for a month and a half, 2 months. Okay, so we're running out of time. Again, GiveSendGo/Save My Freedom. You have all the content. Call them up, tag them, call them out on their crap. Because unless the American people hold these people accountable, who you think are awesome, they've done nothing to help you, done nothing to do anything to make the elections better, done nothing to expose the real election fraud and maladministration and crimes committed. We don't have a country. We don't have a country because you don't have real elections. You have people in office from 2020 through right now, candidates are illegitimate, which goes along with your resolutions, your referendums, your laws. None of that's legitimate, okay? We showed you on this show that Biden did not win Maricopa. He did not win Arizona, okay? Can't show you Trump won, don't need to get elections set aside and redone. 58,550 ballots in Maricopa for the 2020 election were illegal. Trump lost Maricopa by 45,000 and change. Trump lost Arizona by 10,000 and change. Election set aside, drop the mic over. Okay? No questions asked. When you have illegal ballots, non-technical statutes, elections are set aside. 2020 needs to be set aside. 2022 needs to be set aside. This is countrywide, but I'm only focusing on here because that's where we have all the evidence. 2024, it's on video, needs to be set aside. You cannot have another election on top of 3 major illegitimate elections and illegal elections. And again, it's not just here. I was just stupid enough and crazy enough to do the work. So go to the websites, go to the social media, throw in a $5, tell your friends, get on your knees and pray, because we're going to need that too, right? It's bigger than 2 Chronicles. What is it? 2 Chronicles 7:14. We need more than that, okay? But in the meantime, stop pretending and dressing up and playing election and playing candidates and playing everything is just okay. We got this. You don't got it. You don't got anything. Counties control the results. End of story. Okay. And we've shown that with all their own documents. The voters do not. The votes don't match the results. Okay. And you got to stop it. You got to stop it. People need to go to prison. People need to be perp walked. Oh, they have the investigations need to be done. None of that's going to happen if everybody just sits back and says, oh, we're going to get the vote out. No. And again, in Arizona, there's not enough people here that want to do anything that has real meaning and teeth. They love busy work. You want to talk about war? This is a war now. This is a war for your freedom. It's a war for your freedom, for your sacred right to choose everything in your lives. Depends on Maricopa. Trump needs Maricopa to win president. Can't beat this fraud. Nobody can. That's why they control the results. It's great that the polls are saying he's winning. I don't care what the polls say. I don't even care how many people say they're going to go vote for Trump, because that doesn't matter. It's the results that the county manipulates and manufactures. And they keep showing you. And they're laughing at us because they're like, these people, we have done everything in front of them and they still allow us to happen. They must be sitting there going, God, this is really, really easy. And then they say in the primary, we just did it on video so they can see it. And they go, these crazy people are still not. So we got, go ahead. So we got cut out yet again. I think as SG had said, this is the most he's ever been attacked. It's funny at this point, but funny, but not funny. So what I'm just trying to get everybody to understand is all political power is inherent in people, okay? The people. And we deserve the election system and the country and the people in charge, the tyrannical country that we live in now. We get what we deserve. We get what we enable. We get what we support. And we're not supporting the right avenues and the right people. So we literally at this point in the game, because of all this information that's there and what just happened, again, it's not just Maricopa. Maricopa just happens to be the place where we have all of the information and you have video. And it's vital because this is the headquarters of all the election fraud and maladministration. They create it here. They've been testing it. And then each of the counties just pick what they want, like a menu, a la carte. I'll take this fraud for 200. I'll take this fraud for 600. And then they use whatever they need to get the results that they need for how their county operates. We just are really, really big. And they've been working on this for a while. But we, the people, the American people, we get what we deserve. And at this point in the game, if we're going to keep playing dress up and play precinct committee man and play get out the vote and play go to the pep rallies because those are fun and the boat parades are a party and a blast, and we're on Twitter and social media saying Kamala is bad and vote for Trump. That's all fun and games, right? But this is serious. You're talking about everything in your life is dependent on the results of the elections. And you, me, we don't have any input in the results. They're completely manufactured and manipulated. And you've seen it live for the past 256 days that we've shown you. So again, we get what we deserve. And if we are going to be silent yet again because our leaders are crickets, they're doing nothing, then we get what's left over, and we get a tyrannical country, because that's what we already in a tyrannical country, because you don't have real elections. All the people in office right now, going back to 2020, completely 100% illegitimate. So it's up to us. Do you want to keep going this way, or do you want to take advantage of the one amazing opportunity of a lifetime and help here in Maricopa put the spotlight on these SOBs? And the ones who aren't doing anything, like the Kerry Lakes, the Abe Hamides, and I keep going over the long list of Republicans who do nothing. Call these people out. Say, well, and you have all the facts. You have all the evidence. I have people now that are telling me they're getting on the phone. They're having a great time. Because the people on the other end, who are the public servants, who are paid by our tax dollars, sometimes the answers are, yeah, that's the response I want. You still have nothing to say because nobody's held their feet to the fire. So stand up, America. Stand up, speak up, show up. And you don't even have to leave your house. You don't have to leave your bed. So anyway, savemyfreedom.us. Now is the time. This is it. We've got a very short window. Head on over to Give, Send, Go. Throw in a couple bucks. Tell your friends. Opportunity of a lifetime. Put all the noise to the side. It doesn't matter. Dominion. Anything that anybody that's telling you about elections, run back. That's the Lee Harvey Oswald. It's not the real problem. Real problem right there at MTech. Board of Supervisors, they operate, oversee, and certify your elections. Scott Jarrett, Ray Valenzuela, they're your election directors. And you've seen all this play out, okay? Can't beat that. Don't do this. Be loud now. All of this needs to happen before November 5th, and it can. If the people you want to unify against the criminals and unify against the people who are doing nothing and get behind the truth and the evidence. You watch how fast things happen. Because I'm going to do what I can with the courts. If you guys can kick in some of them to pay the bills, I'll do the rest of it. That's what I've been doing. I haven't stopped since I got home November 8th, 2022 at 9 p.m. from that vote center, which now, according to these records, I find it very interesting, and I'll leave it at this. I find it very interesting that I left and I got home at 9. The voting center is about 5 minutes, 6 minutes, maybe if I hit a traffic light. The Islamic Center of Scottsdale. And according to those transfer pieces of paper where there's 217, 223 vote centers, there's 6 missing. I'll find out which ones they are. It won't take me long. So I happened to look at mine. And it looks like, what time did my inspector and the other people go to the transfer station, which was another one, and actually hand over the stuff? It was only 19 minutes later. I'm wondering if she was waiting for me to leave the building, because I might have been maybe the one who actually went in the car with the stuff. Who knows? But I think it was interesting. Oh no, Michelle, we got this. You can go home. Yeah. So
remarkable.
Goes around, comes around. What goes around comes around. SaveMyFreedom.us. Thank you, SG. Sorry it was so long. And again, there's so much more that's worse. And then we'll do 2024 next week, because you need to see that. But you can watch the video yourself, episode 308, and go to the SaveMyFreedom.us, and it's all in that Substack. That's major. That's a crime that you're watching on camera.
Patriots, there you have it. Ms. Swinick, I have to say our conversations are exhilarating and long-winded, but I think they are so full of information that it really has to be pushed out, and it really needs to be seen by the vast majority of we the people out there, because fundamentally you're showing information that is not theoretical in nature. It's not difficult to understand. It's very straightforward and plain, and now literal written word admissions from the Gotham style leadership that we all seem to be contending with here in this United States of America. So it's truly a pleasure. For the audience out there, I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. Tune back in for part 2 as we come at you with more unearthing of the events happening currently in the 2024 season leading up to November. This is SG Anon. I'll be back with all of you again soon on the Q News Patriot, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.